starting last year, we stumbled on something. And for me, it was a personal journey finding out about AI like anybody else. People, we all heard about it. We've been seeing the gist. I think I was lucky enough to get in on it, maybe a bit quicker than most people. But as of February 2023, we had an idea. We said, look, we want to explore AI. We want to know what's possible. We want to find out what it can do when it comes to music. And we want to see how that affects everything else and the impact it can make. It was important that we figured out what was possible, right? And when it came to AI, we had a few questions. Like when I looked at it, this is for me personally, right? My first question was, how would this affect the music business? How will music production, will it still be viable? Because for me personally, I still used to work with people. I still used to make beats, I have my own albums. But by the time I had sampled a few AI tools, I was worried. I was like, oh, these guys don't come out us for set too. You get, and the biggest question for me is, why isn't anyone saying anything about this? The conversation that we're having today sits on data, and with data, you talk about trends. And if you look globally, the trend is telling us that AI is not going anywhere anytime soon. It was spreading. It's affecting several industries, and it was just a matter of time. I did a little bit more research, and I found that even in certain spaces within the music industry, AI was already taking root, but people just weren't using the term AI. While the rest of us were out here trying to ignore AI, the major corporations were buying out AI startups that were making compelling AI products. So you had the guys from China who were buying out tones, like there's a platform called Supertone. And the same thing was happening in all of that space. Besides the people who are just blatantly afraid of artificial intelligence and the fact that we're worried that it's going to take our jobs away as musicians, there was the other half, the people who didn't feel threatened at all, who were convinced that AI cannot possibly do the same thing a human being can do. We came down to a few things. AI cannot truly be creative. It can't really create something original. And AI lacks soul. I'm sure you guys have heard that one before. It lacks soul. It's not the same thing. There's something about the human feeling that's in art. But is that true? How true is that? To what extent? Can you define soul? This AI is built off of pre-existing work. So when you say that the AI art lacks soul, it's really drawing from human art. So it's like, are you saying the human art lacks soul? It's like you're copying somebody in exam. You understand? I'm not going to finish copying you and you get, A and I'll get B. If I do a good enough job, that A is for me and you. So, but I say this with a little bit of, should I say a little bit of a joke or in a warm sense, not to take away from the gravity of it, but to help us understand that it's maybe not as deep as we think. Maybe not, but we'll find out. So the goal was for us to achieve three things. We wanted to prove efficiency. We wanted to prove that the AI could be efficient, it could be cost effective, and also could be compelling. This is off the back of the argument people were making, So with that, in terms of efficiency, we said, look, we'll create this album in 3 days. One of the questions I've gotten a lot since it's come out was, why did we say 3 days? There's no real reason. I just wanted to see how effective it could be. Typically, it would take you, at the very least, 3 months to work on an album, like standard. In terms of cost, yes, there are other factors involved. Are you working with other producers? Are you a producer yourself? But typically, if you had to pay people, pay for studio sessions, record guest verses, whatever it is, mixing and mastering, we all know what that's going to cost. So we put our budget at a cap of $500. So look, whatever is happening, we're not spending past $500. For context, we didn't even spend the entire $500. And the last one is in terms of how compelling it can be. One of the arguments that I had with a friend of mine who, funny enough, is a gospel artist, he kept telling me, I was like, oh, AI can never make like gospel. And I don't mean to be Oppenheimer once again, but I said, yeah, we'll find out. What is gospel? What is soul? What are these things? So we made sure that the project was going to have songs that reflected the abstract concepts of life, such as love, hope, and faith. These are the elements that make up the things that we describe when we talk about soul, technically, because in the end, they are abstract, they are subjective, which also means that it just has to hit a few notes and it would resonate with people in a general sense. Now, that being said, our goal was set. We had to figure out our scope. We're going to test out a few things. We had it mapped out. So we said, let's see what AI can do with regards to ideation. So which means drafting the album theme, the title. The second aspect was composition, songwriting, beat production. Then actual production, we're talking recording, voice synthesis, mixing and mastering. Then with release and marketing, we're trying to test out cover arts, visualizers, press release, and marketing campaigns. Now, just so everybody can sleep a little better tonight, the AI didn't exactly perform greatly in every single aspect. And I'll just give us a quick rundown of what that was like. What we ended up creating was a 9-track album called Infinite Echoes. This is just for context. So we have an idea of what that looked like for people who didn't get a chance to hear it yet. And with this project, the title of the album was AI generated. The album art was AI generated, the album theme. So we had prompted for an album that was Afrobeat, hip hop with a little bit of, dancehall infusions, an idea around hope, faith, and love. But then just give it some content, and we told the AI to give us some ideas from there. So it gives us this really broad theme. From there, we get title suggestions, maybe about 10 or 20 of them. I think I liked Infinite Echoes the best, so we picked that one. And based off of that, we prompted for track lists, which we tried our best to stick to the original track list. So more than half the songs are titled exactly as the AI recommended. So songs like Love Tempo, Dream Chaser, God's Whispers, which is the gospel song on the project. These songs were literally titled by the AI. Now, when it gets a little bit more interesting, and I think this is maybe more to me as a human who is coordinating it, I had wanted the project to just not be a bunch of songs stuck together. I say this all the time. For anybody who's made music long enough, there's a level, there are levels to making albums. You can take, and this is a shade to a lot of people, so I'm not going to say no offense, because I'm not Daniel Rega, but but there are people who literally just slap a bunch of singles together in one project and call it an album. That to me is never an album. An album should be coherent. There should be a few things that tie together, either sonically in terms of the sound and nature of the songs, or the narrative of the project. It should sort of have an overarching theme that we can sense across the project. In certain cases, it can be both, but there has to be something that holds the songs together. And in this case, we wanted the same thing. The songs that I think were the best songs on the album came from the days when we wrote in addition to what the AI gave us, when we produced in addition to what it gave us. And I started to see that it became more of an assistive tool as opposed to something that was just happening and pulling us in different directions. Recording was, of course, pretty tricky, like you can imagine. There isn't like a tool where it just automatically records you without somebody controlling. So we still had to do that the regular way. We used our DAWs, we still recorded ourselves and what have you. Mixing and mastering, without question, we still had to mix. That one, no AI can save you just yet. So shout out to you and your sound engineer. But mastering, there are a few tools out there that kind of help you, but it's still very broad. I don't like to rave too much about it because the tools that exist that can sort of automate the mastering process have been around way before this whole AI craze. Platforms like Landa kind of were offering that at an early stage. It's just now that platforms like DistroKid are doing it too. The key questions now are, what is our takeaway? And for me, the biggest takeaway is that AI is just a tool. It's not educating all of us yet, because I cannot speak to what's coming up in the next few months. And I think, and I'm saying that from the perspective of what we have today, but I also know that it only works best if you allow yourself to explore it. It's easier to sit outside and be worried. But if you try it out, there's a lot you can learn and there's so much more we can do. Second question, and I think, sat with me after this is, what is the core value of AI in music? And this one I will say very firmly. The biggest thing AI does for us in music is that it lowers the barrier to entry. There are a lot of things that people would have to pay premium for to access that you can access now. There's a lot more you can do. There's a lot more you can test out. And that's beautiful. But ultimately, the question is, what is the future of music, especially with AI and what tech is doing? The truth is, this question, your guess is as good as mine. I will be careful not to say anything, with a firm heart or unequivocally, because we honestly don't know. But what we do know is that the technology is improving very rapidly. We've seen something a few months ago. If you follow the trends and you follow the data, you would see that for tools like Midjourney that were literally just on version 3 just how many months ago, they're on 4 now, they're 5. I think it's 5 currently. And images are getting better. What's going on with people at Wonder Studios and what they're doing with special effects. There's just so much that's going on. I think that with music, this is my personal prediction. I think first, we're going to need to rethink how the entire structure and industry of music works with relation to how content is consumed and created. I think that the concept of copyright and how it's enforced would adjust slightly. What do I mean by that? Most likely people might need to consider leveraging things like the blockchain. This is, of course, in no way marketing crypto, because crypto is independent of the blockchain. So, and ultimately, for anybody who still has reservations, I would say that the younger people who are coming don't care about these things that you're worried about. It's a tool to them. They'll use it. They'll do more with it, and you should too. So for me, that pretty much sums up, what we set out to do, what we're able to achieve in a nutshell without getting too lost in the sauce. We decided to set up our own business, and run things from there. And we created a business called Wakati Media, and what we are is an innovation-driven media company. Our focus is completely on finding the next frontier for entertainment content, leveraging artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, and just various forms of interactive and immersive content, because that's literally what's next.